What's up, degenerates? This is Locked In. I'm your host, Mason Cameron, at PFF_Mace on all socials. I can't even say Twitter anymore, V, because it's not Twitter. So I don't even know how we're supposed to do that. I had to change up my whole intro for that. But anything you're on, anything that I'm on, check me out, PFF_Mace on the socials. And with me, as always, my partner in crime, Vishaal Gupta, the number one handicapper in the freaking nation, at Vishaal_Gupta 95 on the socials. V, how are you living? How's the offseason treated you? It's been a long time. I'm happy to be back.
It's been way too long. That was the longest offseason I can remember. So happy to be back, though. This is clearly the best time of year. Week one, we get like 20, 22 weeks of just nonstop football. It's going to be incredible. I cannot wait to get started. Let's do this, man.
It's going to be so much fun. I have a shit-eating grin on. It's going to be so much fun. I can't wait. And you know what? We might be one of the first shows of the season. I know the guys are still getting ready because drafts are out of the way. So we are the premier ticket right here on Important Nonsense. I can't wait. And for anybody who wants some of the background, some behind the scenes, actually this offseason, me and Vishaal got to kick it, got to meet up. We went to go see the Nuggets play the Suns in the playoffs. That was a lot of fun. So V, again, it was so good to finally get to kick it with you and have some fun. And I can't wait to break down the whole football season with you again.
Yep, definitely a highlight of the offseason for me as well. And yeah, 100% looking forward to hanging out with you every week for the rest of the season.
Yeah, and pretty soon I'm going to have to head out there to Vegas and we're going to get crazy out there. It's going to be
Yes,
nuts.
absolutely, 100%.
Absolutely. So football is back, and that means the betting season is finally upon us. And it's about time. Waking up yesterday was like, Christmas morning for us degenerates. It was a great game. We have a couple of things we have to get out of the way as far as changes to the show. So for anybody that is familiar with what we do here on Locked In, it's everything betting, everything that you need to know about the lines, the totals, any of the props in any of the games. So for starters, we usually used to do a show called Over Underdogs at halftime of Thursday Night Football, where we would pick props and we would break it down right there at halftime. And we'd also break down TNF a little bit. We're not going to be doing that show anymore. But what we are going to be doing is every week in Locked In, we're going to be breaking down some of our favorite props that go with some of our best bets for games so that you have opportunities to double up some of that money and even insulate yourself from some losses. So that's something that you're going to need to watch for. And also, we're going to start off every show by kind of breaking down the betting tidbits of TNF. If you want to know who to bet on for TNF, that's something you're going to have to ask us over in the Discord. And to get access to that, you're going to need to go to our website, importantnonsense.com, and become a member. And that way you can get into our Discord and you can ask us anything there. So you're going to want to do that. And that's how you're going to get all the info on Thursday night. But in the show, we'll break down Thursday night football a little bit and just kind of see the things we learned and the things that surprised us. The other big change is usually we went, V, you're going to like this one. So V, for anybody that remembers, we did NFL versus last year where myself and Vishaal went head to head on the book every week, trying to pick against each other and see who came out on top. It came down to the wire, but V ultimately was the champion. And unfortunately, we're not going to be coming back to that this year due to some writing changes over at the website. We might bring that back a little bit later down the road, but this season, the 2023 season, we won't be doing that. But what we will do is anytime that we do fall on a different side, we are going to track those and we're going to kind of keep a record as we go head to head, but it's not going to be the main focus of the beginning of the show anymore, unfortunately. But that does mean that you will remain the one true champion
Yep.
until we come back around to it eventually. And
Till the end of times, man. Till
I'm
the
gonna
end of times.
I'm gonna take it back from you eventually. But so what that does also mean though is that we're gonna have more game picks. Usually we kept it to like just a handful for each other. We're gonna hit pretty much every game. Now we don't always hit every game. That just happens where we only like so many games. But if you do have another game, like I said, that you want to know about, come into the Discord, ask us, or even come right here into the chat. We're happy to answer any questions that pop in. So yeah, so that's about does it. Oh, and then also We are also going to answer any questions directly from the Discord into the chat at the end of the show. So definitely want to stick around to the end. If you have any dire questions, we will definitely break into all of them right there at the end. But without further ado, V, that does it. We're getting into the nitty gritty. And the first game of the season was a banger, obviously.
Absolutely.
We had Detroit taking on Kansas City in Kansas City. Detroit comes out on top 21-20. The Chiefs were a 3.5-point favorite. Detroit covers and wins on the money line about plus 225. So a nice little nest egg for a lot of people who are, understandably high on Detroit this season, and they might be something to watch for. The thing for me, though, that stuck out had to be Kansas City's ineptitude without Travis Kelce in the lineup. They're just not an intimidating offense without him. What did you see with how they played last night?
I mean, last night proved anything at all. It proved that Mahomes is still the best quarterback in the league. He was dropping dimes left and right with minimal protection up front and minimal help from his pass catchers, but the balls are there. They were in the money. Even that last one on 4th and 25, people are complaining about the call. That ball hit the guy right in the hands again, and it was him rolling to his left, throwing all the way across field, 30, 40 yards downfield, whatever it was, hits the guy in the hands, drops it. I mean, he's unbelievable. It reminded me a lot of the Super Bowl against Tampa Bay, where he got pummeled a lot because the offensive line play wasn't there, but he was still throwing dots all over the field.
Yeah,
he needs help. As good as he is, he'll need some help, and I think Kelce will be back next week. They'll continue to be fantastic again. I'm sure they'll get it figured out one way or the other. But yeah, Kansas City. There's no issue with me for Kansas City, and then for Detroit, that was a good win for them, I think, because I don't think their offensive line played all that well. I kind of felt like Goff was under more pressure than we're used to him seeing from us seeing him getting pressured. So if they're gonna not play well in week one and still come out with the win, that's got to feel good for them because I can only see them getting better as the season goes on. So good for Detroit and no panic yet for Kansas City.
Yeah, and absolutely. And one of the things is that neither of these teams were at their full potential. Both of these teams can look better, but I think it's got to be an encouraging sign for Detroit, who's coming into this season 1-0 against the Kansas City Chiefs, one of the top, dynasties of the last 10 years or whatever. They're aggressive. As you've so eloquently put it, though, before, V, and as Giselle has so eloquently put it, though, before, Mahomes can't catch and throw the ball to himself. So he is still phenomenally talented. I have a little trouble trusting them, at least moving forward, if Travis Kelce's not in the lineup. That's something that's obviously going to need to remain monitored as they move forward because, wow. They might also need to figure out something that's happening over there at receiver because some guys that you were not expecting ended up being the better guys in that offense. And then all the Kadarius Toney truthers are now in shambles. So
where are these people? How do these people even exist? What has to go wrong in your life to be a Kadarius Toney truther?
I don't know. I think we'll have to hit up who in the IN team is a Kadarius Toney truther. I'm trying to think. Is it Jason?
I think it's Jason. That's probably
it sounds like something Jason would do, but I feel like Jason has more self-respect than that. But we're gonna have to figure it out. I'm sure somebody's gonna yell at us in the Discord about our Kadarius Toney slander here pretty soon. Oh, actually, I even have a graphic for it here. Well, not our Kadarius Toney slander, but so that's how this ended up last night. Such a good game. Detroit ends up covering. And we actually, even another surprising note is that even with these two fairly good offense, like we said, they weren't at their top of the game. And it meant something for this total. So one thing that I want to highlight early on in the season is that every team is still getting their chemistry. A lot of these offenses only played one drive in the preseason. There's one less preseason game. When you see totals that are as high as 51.5 in week 1, 2, 3 in the first month of the season, I would approach those very hesitantly because we're looking at a game like this one where Detroit and Kansas City were both very highly ranked offenses last season. And the 51 kind of makes sense if this game was being played in December of last year, but it's not. So this is
Right.
something to keep in mind as we approach the weekend coming forward. Any of these kind of higher total games, or even some of the lower total games, they're unders that are in sight because these teams take a while to kind of get their feet under them and get situated. So that's something that's going to be watching before or as we move forward. And I know that we have a lot of unders on our card this week. So that's going to
Yep.
be something that we kind of dive into more as we go. But so for the games this week, like I said, we don't hit every game, but we have a ton of the games on the slate. If you see anything or you don't see a game that you're interested in, definitely hit us up on Discord and we will answer anything that comes up. So the first one we have on the agenda, V, might not be the most interesting game on paper, but that's actually one that I'm super interested in. Carolina at Atlanta. Why are we interested in that? Because Atlanta won us a ton of money last year, like weirdly enough. Like they
Yeah.
were very, very good against the spread, at least for the first half of the season. They kind of teetered off as it went towards the end, but I mean, they've made some strides. They have some advancement in the running game. I'm interested to see what goes with this one. So, for starters, you're on Atlanta at -3.5. And to tell you, the Sharps are right there with you, V. 85% of the money is on Atlanta. What do you see when you see Atlanta covering more than a field goal here? I know that when we talk about these key numbers, that 3.5, that half point at 3 is worth a lot here. So, what makes you confident that they can pass even that right there?
Yeah, I was definitely not expecting to come into week one betting on the Atlanta Falcons. That was not my plan or goal heading into the season, but that's just kind of where we're at right now for a few different factors. And this is, I think we talked about this a lot last year. This is more of a bet against Carolina than it is a bet on Atlanta. I like Atlanta. They have a ton of awesome pieces. The last 3 years in the first round, they've taken Kyle Pitts, Drake London, and now Bijan Robinson. They have a fantastic skill group with those guys. They have a solid offensive line with guys like Caleb McGarry, Chris Lindstrom, Jake Matthews as a solid offensive line. And then in the offseason, they made a ton of moves for defense. They got guys like Calais Campbell, Bud Dupree, and Jesse Bates to pair up with the guys they already have in Grady Jarrett and AJ Terrell. So this is a really solid roster, surprisingly, that they put together. The big question mark is obviously, can Desmond Ritter play? I think that's very much still a question mark that needs to be figured out. Are they going to be team in the market for a quarterback next year because they feel like the rest of the roster is ready to compete, but they might just have issues at quarterback? But the big key for me in this game is on the other side. It's with Carolina. I have no, I think Bryce Young can be good. I'm not 100% sure which way he's going to go with his career, but I could definitely see him being a very good quarterback. But he has absolutely no weapons to work with. Heading into the season, they already had one of the worst wide receiving groups in the league. And now we're talking about DJ Chark already being ruled out for this one and Adam Thielen being questionable. He might not play. Who does that leave them with? That leaves them with Terrace Marshall, who has 45 total catches in 2 seasons, and rookie Jonathan Mingo. And then I guess you can throw in Hayden Hurst. That's not an NFL wide receiving group. That's just not anything you can be successful with. I have zero idea how they're going to move the ball in this game. Even if Thielen plays, he might not be 100%. I'm just not seeing how they're going to manage on offense. That's why you just kind of have to take Atlanta in this one. You got to take them to cover. Also, why I'm on the under in this game. If Carolina can't score points, Atlanta's not going to be able to score enough for this to go over. And that's why I'm also hitting the under on Bryce Young's passing yardage at 195.5. Who on this offense, which one of these receivers is going to total up to 195 receiving yards? I don't see it. I mean, they have Miles Sanders and somebody else, Chuba Hubbard at running back. Those guys aren't like elite pass catching backs. They're just nobody to throw the ball to. So I don't see how he's going to have a successful start to his career.
And I'm higher on Mingo than other people. I'm fairly certain just from, the talk for sure, just around league circles
Mhm.
about I'm higher on Mingo, but I'm still right there with you. Who are they supposed to throw the ball to? They really just lack a lot of the talent. I don't know if that their roster was in position that they should have been moving up to one to get Bryce Young. They're going to put Bryce Young, who is a smaller quarterback, at a disadvantage without weapons. I think that Bryce is going to have a really tough adjustment. Now, I'm not sitting here saying like, oh, they should have gone with a different quarterback. I just don't think that this roster was in place for them to be like, we need to move up and go get this guy. or we need to
Especially when you're
be
trading your best weapon in DJ Moore
you're
to make
trading
that
your
move.
only weapon, right?
Only weapon.
Your only actual weapon. You traded him away, and I think you're trying to essentially replace it with a like they were already a run heavy offense, but I think they're trying to lean even more into that. And I don't know, here at IN, if anybody's been around with us for a while, Miles Sanders is not really a guy that moves the needle here.
Nope.
So I think that they're going to be pinning a lot on him, and I just don't see it really flourishing for them. It's going to be a tough draw. So I'm right there with you with the unders on both the total at 40, where we're both understanding, hey, two young quarterbacks. There's going to be a big learning curve here.
Well,
And not to mention that these were two of the most run heavy offenses in the league last season. That should lead to a decrease in possessions and just not as many opportunities to score points in general. I think 40 seems like a low number on the surface, but there are other numbers in this week that are in the 38 range. So
right.
I think that 40 is a really reasonable number. I'd even take it at 39.5, which I would imagine it'll probably move a little bit closer below that 40 mark by the time kickoff comes, because this is just a recipe for like a 10 to 17 game or a 10 to 13 game. It's just really not a lot going for them. So that's
Agreed.
going to be
Yep.
an interesting one to watch for sure.
Totally agree.
Yeah. So that might not be the best game, but the next one is one that I'm actually pretty excited about. So the next game we have on the book here is actually going to be Cincinnati at Cleveland. Cincinnati -2.5 on the road. The total for this game, 47.5. One of the bigger numbers of the week. I'm all over Cincinnati -2.5 right here. I get that it's actually even moved. It looks like even on our thing, it's moved quite a bit today. They're around -2 or even -1.5 in some spots, it says. I'm taking it wherever I can get it. They could move this up to 3 and I'd still take it. Cincinnati is just a significantly better team, in my opinion. I understand that, like, the thought process is Cleveland now has a year under their belt with Watson and they're going to get more comfortable. I'm going to be honest, nothing on that offense really scares me, frankly, besides Nick Chubb. But I think that he's done all as he can do, and that team on offense has still kind of been middling for the last 2-3 years. And you're telling me that they're going up against a team that is just poised to compete for Super Bowls for the next couple of years. You have Joe Burrow, who just signed the absolute biggest bag deal ever, 55 M's a year, 275 over 5. Absolutely crazy. He's poised to make an MVP run this year. He has one of the best receiving cores in the league. The defense isn't as bad as it, might look on paper. They've played reasonably well. But really, the show for this Bengals team is what Joe Burrow can do on offense with these weapons. They were sixth in EPA per play last season, one of the most efficient offenses, and Cleveland was around the league average in EPA on both sides of the ball, defense and offense. So it's like they're not really moving the needle. I don't really think that even 2.5 on the road is enough. That's why I'm still even willing to take it at -3. But if you can get it all the way down at -1.5, go ahead and jump on it. I'm going to go do that too as well. And I can't get enough of this game, B. And you're also liking this one at under 47.5 on the total. What do you see when you see the under for this game?
Yeah, I just feel like it's too many points, especially when one of the teams is Cleveland and their offense is just we don't know what it is yet. I mean, this is still a brand new offense with a lot of new pieces. I mean, I know they played together a little bit last year when Watson came back. But that was only 6 games, and he was just definitely not the quarterback he was when he was in Houston. So I think we need to see it when he needs to prove it to us again that he can still play at a high level, and this can be a functional offense that can kind of go up and down the field and score points. I just feel like when you're setting this number at 47, you're kind of expecting Cleveland to be able to put up, 24, 25 points. And I don't know if they can do that just like off the top of their head. Like they have to be able to prove it to us. And the 6 games that Watson played last year, the Browns scored more than 20 points just twice out of 6 attempts. They had less than 20 points in their other 4 games. I mean, it was not a good offense when he was under center. he has Amari Cooper. He has, I guess, Donovan Peoples-Jones. But outside of that, you're looking at Elijah Moore, who could be good, but definitely hasn't worked out so far in the league. Marquise Goodwin, David Njoku. I mean, it's not like the greatest weapons we've ever seen. I think that offense in general is being a little overhyped until they prove it to us. I just don't see where Cleveland's going to be able to put up enough points in this game to hit the over. And there's also, we all know Burrow is fantastic, but there could be a chance of rust. I mean, he missed all of training camp. We remember last year they started off pretty bad. They played Pittsburgh in week 1 at home and they couldn't move the ball at all. I don't think they broke 20 points. It wasn't a great day for that offense. So it wouldn't be surprising to see another performance like that out of them. But the big thing for me is I can't trust Cleveland's offense until they prove it to us.
Yeah, that's absolutely a good point. The biggest question mark here is Cleveland. Like, what's going to happen there? We know they do have, Myles Garrett, and maybe he can make some noise, but that's a hard thing to kind of really pin down when you're talking about what that means in terms of the difference in this spread for sure. And you're
Mm-hmm.
right. I think the hype on Cleveland is, I mean, it's understandable when you're like, okay, hey, they should be better. They've had a little more time together. There hasn't been a ton of changes, but they also don't have Kareem Hunt anymore, who I think was a
Yep.
valuable piece of this offense. And like you said, none of their weapons really like scream like a dominating factor besides maybe Nick Chubb. And I just think that, I mean, Watson might not be what he was advertised when he signed that contract, because they
Yep.
have a lot riding on that deal working out for them, tied up in their books, and that's why they had to, part with some of these players that they did. This may come back to bite them. That might have been a bad investment for them, but that still remains to be seen. They're going to be the team, one of the most watched teams that I have moving forward in the season. 100%.
Yeah, because their
100%.
range of possibilities are so wide. They could easily bottom out, but if Watson does come back and play well, they could be right there.
They could be one of the best
Regular
teams in
season
the
be
league
competing for a
if
championship.
Watson is, yeah, exactly. They could be one of the best teams in the league if Watson is the guy that he was in Houston prior to controversy dropping.
Right. Yep.
All right. The next game, though, we have on the list here is another interesting one. San Francisco at Pittsburgh. Now, this is a game that you are on alone here, but I'm right there with you. I really like it. I like your thinking here. So, what are you looking at when we see San Francisco -2.5 on the road in Pittsburgh? What are you thinking about that one?
I am seeing Mike Tomlin as a home underdog, which is something that rarely goes well for the road favorite in this game. Mike Tomlin is 13-4-3 against the spread as a home underdog in his career. He's just too good of a coach to pass on spots like this when you're given to them as a bettor. You kind of just have to take it blindly and just know it's going to work out more times than not. But deeper analysis if you want. We're going to have to see what Purdy can do. He played well when he came in the second half of the season, but I think for a lot of us, there's still some question marks. We want to see him do it long term and against some stronger defenses. I think this Pitt defense is probably better than any defense he faced last season. So this is going to be a big test for him coming off the injury. Can he actually play well and win? Can they win because of him? And can he make the big time throws, not just little dink and dunk passes that Deebo Samuel takes to the house, and all those stats go on Purdy's stat sheet and makes him look fantastic. Can he actually be the one who's driving this team? So that's going to be a big thing for me. On the offensive line for San Francisco, they lost Mike McGlinchey in the offseason. He's being replaced with Colton McKivitz, who only has 5 career starts. So that offensive line versus this Pitt defensive line is going to be very interesting to watch. Not sure if this San Francisco offensive line is going to continue to dominate like it has in past seasons. And then on the other side, we've all watched Pickett in the preseason. He looked really, really good. He might have been the best quarterback playing in the preseason, just the numbers and how consistent and efficient he was. They have great weapons there with George Pickens, Deontay Johnson, Calvin Austin, Pat Fryermuth. Those are really good pass catching players. You have Najee Harris, who I think he's still talented, but I think a lot of the issues are poor offensive line play in the past. So if he can finally get some decent blocking, maybe he can emerge and become that star player that they hope that they drafted. And then they did try to bolster their offensive line. They took Broderick Jones in the first round this year. The offensive line was really bad last year, both run blocking and pass blocking. They gave up just way too many sacks, way too many pressures. They didn't create any room in the running game. So if they're better this year, even by a little bit, this team can be significantly better. And then we already talked about it. Their defense is fantastic. They have T.J. Watt, they have Cam Hayward, and then rookies Nick Herbig and Keanu Benton look fantastic in the preseason. They're getting sacks left and right. So I just think this defense is very, very good with Pittsburgh, and I think they have enough pieces on offense where they should be able to win this game against Brock Purdy, who still needs to prove it.
Yeah, and absolutely. And it looks like the Sharps agree with you too. 85% of the money from the handle is on Pittsburgh to cover this 2.5 at home. And it makes a lot of sense. Kenny Pickett was I believe he was the highest graded quarterback by PFF in the preseason. He was definitely the highest graded Steeler in the preseason by PFF. He's looked impressive, and they have some low-key weapons that might break out this season. George Pickens is a mean dude, and he is the exact attitude they love there in Pittsburgh. I think they're going to feed him the ball. He might be somebody that you guys should watch here in fantasy too. And we actually even have a question here popping into with Marcus. Marcus works over here at both PFF and Important Nonsense with us. You guys think Pickett over 212.5 passing and Najee over 48.5 rushing? So that's another, or let me leave that up here for a second, actually, though. That's another good question. I think at 212.5 passing for Pickett, that's a decent number given how he's performed in the preseason. 212 is usually on the lower end of some of these ranges. I think even at home, you should see he's still being a little bit undervalued there. I kind of like the over on that. Najee is another question like we've talked about. They have a lot of questions on the offensive line. 48.5, though, isn't a huge number. V, what do you think about both of these ones?
Yeah, I think I agree with you on the over for Pickett, and I think one key factor in this game could be the status of Talanoa Hufanga, the star safety for San Francisco. He is questionable to play in this game, so if he is out or if he's even limited and not playing at 100%, that's a pretty big blow for this San Francisco secondary, and I think it could open up a lot of room and a lot of opportunities for Pickett in the passing game. So I think I definitely like to take the over, especially if we hear that Hufanga is going to miss this game. And then for Najee, it's tough. I mean, this San Francisco front seven is just stacked. Bosa signed his massive contract a couple days ago. He is expected to play. They got Javon Hargrave in the offseason. They're just loaded. Fred Warner is still there, manning the middle of the field. It'll be tough. I think he'll get plenty of touches. I just don't know how efficient he's going to be. I mean, that's a really low number for a guy who is expected to be a workhorse back.
Right.
If for them to set it that low, I think it just kind of tells you that there's not expected to be a lot of efficiency in this running game, at least to start the season.
If they were expecting him to be at an advantage in the matchup, I think this number would be closer to 60 than 48.5. I think that indicates that they're expecting, 18 carries and 45 yards. I think if you go over on that, you're going to end up cutting it really close. But I think Pickett is going to have an opportunity to really do something. And I think 212.5 really isn't a huge number. I get that like his totals weren't super high throughout last season, but I think that his improvement and his comfortability in the offense is going to really translate, at least early on in this season. You can tell he's kind of put in a little bit of work there to get comfortable with these receivers. And like you said, we might be talking about this group of weapons as one of the better units, as one of the top 10 units in the league here in a handful, like after a month of the season, because they have a lot of untapped potential over there that they might be able to get into.
Yep, totally agree.
So the next game on our list here, though, is another one that we're both in on here. We have Jacksonville -4.5 road favorite at Indianapolis. The total on this game, 46.5. And we actually both stand on the side of Jacksonville. It's actually kind of swung quite a bit. It's started to move a bit. It's kind of fluctuated between 5 and 4.5. So we have them both at, I think you took it at 5. I took it at 4.5. I like it at 5 too. I'm sure you like it at 4.5 as well.
Yep.
This is something we talk about a lot with these numbers here in the middle. is that these numbers in no man's land that aren't really near key numbers, you just kind of have to look at them like a full touchdown. Like, is Jacksonville a full touchdown better than Indianapolis? I think you could say yes. I'm leaning there. So like a half point in either direction isn't as valuable as, say, the half point from 3 to 3.5, like we talked about a little bit earlier. For
Yep.
me, 4.5 is a really great number. 5 is a good number too. Trevor Lawrence is poised for a huge season, and we might even be talking about an MVP season because now he's got a little extra firepower in the lineup with Calvin Ridley. Free my man Calvin Ridley. We love bettors here. I hope Calvin's doing well and recovering well from his false imprisonment, but he's back now, and he has some juice. I know it's been a long time since he's played football, but this is a guy that was ultra talented when he was on the field in Atlanta and was overshadowing Julio Jones to a fair degree. I guess you could say it kind of went back and forth, but I would say that he was just as impressive at a young age. Calvin Ridley, they're going to be a pretty good team. What are you seeing with this matchup? I know you also have it at under 46.5. What makes you lean that way, and what leans you towards the Jags covering this?
Yeah, a big theme for me for week one is fading these rookie quarterbacks. Not because I don't think they're going to be any good. It's just I don't think they have really anything around them that's going to help them or support them be good early on in their careers. Same thing for Anthony Richardson. I think he looks like he could be a phenomenal quarterback in this league, but there's just no weapons there. I mean, Pittman is fine. He's a solid receiver. He is probably a low end wide receiver one around the league. But besides that, who do they have? They have Alex Pierce and rookie Josh Downs. I mean, that is not a receiving core you can do anything with, really. And then we all know what's happening with Jonathan Taylor. He's on PUP. He's going to miss at least the first 4 weeks of the season, if not more.
If not
That
more,
leaves
yeah.
that leaves you with Zach Moss and Deion Jackson. That doesn't inspire any faith, really, that they're going to do anything on the ground. And then on defense, I mean, this is a really young defense, especially in the secondary. They have 3 second-year players starting in the secondary, guys named Daryl Baker, Rodney Thomas, and Dallas Flowers. Now, I consider myself a pretty big football fan, but I don't really recognize any of these names, and they're starting for the Indianapolis Colts in week one against a guy who you said, and I agree with, could be an MVP candidate this year in Trevor Lawrence. I don't see how they're going to stop him from putting up massive numbers. I don't see how they're going to stop Calvin Ridley, Zay Jones, Christian Kirk. I just don't see anything from this Indy defense that's going to work, or their offense. I think this is going to be another tough sledding for them. I'm surprised this total is so high at 46.5. Again, that's assuming that they can put up 20 plus points. I don't know how you can just go into week one and think that they can do that as if it's so easy when we haven't seen their quarterback prove anything in the NFL. That number is just too high for me.
Yeah, at the end of the day, the Colts are going to be playing this game without their best player.
Yep.
That's really what it comes down to, because Jonathan Taylor was what made this offense go. And this offense was atrocious. This offense was atrocious. I watched this offense play in person on Thursday night last season. It was the worst game of football I've ever watched. They were bad last season. Now, Anthony Richardson, I think, is a dynamic player who should obviously help add some boost to this offense. But he has a lot to learn and a long way to go. He was a raw prospect. He's got a lot of stuff to make up and a lot to learn about the NFL game. It's going to be a learning curve, and they really don't have a lot to lean on. Now, could their receivers end up being decent? I mean, I liked Josh Downs coming out. I think he's a good player. Now, he has a lot to prove in the NFL. I've liked a lot of players that came out. You know what I mean? Michael Pittman, obviously a good player. Alex Pierce shined at some times, but these are not guys that you can sit there and be like, those are a great group to insulate a young quarterback with. I just think that there's a lot of room for error there, and I think you're going to see that room for error. So it's going to be a tough run for the Colts. They're going to need some incredible revamp to their kind of porous defense last season as well, if they're going to have any shot in this one. And I just don't think they are. I think Jacksonville is poised to really run away with this division. I don't know any, analyst or expert or whatever you want to call everybody that talks about football. I don't know anybody that isn't picking the Jags to win this division. So it's that simple. 5 is no man's land. They could have given him 7, and I'm still taking it on the road. So
totally agree. And we talked so much in the offseason about Trey Lance having limited experience in college before coming to the NFL. I feel like we're not giving that same coverage to Anthony Richardson, who also had his own limited
right.
playing time in college. But we all expect him to be phenomenal right away just because he's good at running the football. I mean, fine, he might be good in fantasy, but don't expect that to translate into real world NFL right away. It's going to take time for them. Another thing I want to bring up, just long term focus for the Colts.
Mhm.
Their over under was set at 6.5 this year, the same number as the Houston Texans.
They're
That's
winning
an
3 games this year.
insanely high number for a team with an extremely raw quarterback. Their best player, like you said, Jonathan Taylor, might not play for the whole season. It might be a little bit late, but if you have some time, try to grab under 6.5 for the Indianapolis Colts. That's a crazy high number. Don't be afraid to sprinkle a little bit on them having the first overall pick next year. This is not going to be a good football team this year.
Hey, it seems like that. And, a good thing that you brought up, especially when it comes in terms of quarterback prospecting. We do a lot of hee-hawing in the offseason about the best athletics, athletic profiles, the best, this guy, Trey Lance, extremely athletic. We can teach him how to play quarterback. It doesn't matter that he doesn't have this experience. Well, we say the same thing about Anthony Richardson, where, hey, this guy's ultra athletic. It doesn't matter. We can teach him how to play quarterback. And it's like, okay, maybe somebody could teach him how to be playing quarterback. Not every
Not the Colts.
team is set up to do that.
No.
So I think that specifically, this is going to be a long road for them. I'm right there with you. Under 6.5. I couldn't believe it when it was at 6.5. I know that we kind of talked about it a little bit when we in the offseason about some of these surprises, but that was one of the most surprising ones for me as well. 100%.
Yeah.
The next game on our list here is a game that I will absolutely admit I probably won't be watching this one. We'll catch this one on Red Zone if it were to pop up. But the Arizona Cardinals are at the Washington Commanders. Washington is a 7-point favorite. The total for this game, 38.5. I mean, I'm not touching the spread. I think the Cardinals are right there with the Colts for being, did the Cardinals actually announce? I know that Josh Dobbs was like rumored to be
Only they've
announced.
announced their starter yet officially.
They haven't officially announced it. I know that there's been like rumors that it's Dobbs or whatever, and which makes the most sense. Yeah. But the fact that they're this far in and they don't even know who's starting under center for them is not a good indication of what's gonna happen. I bet you that they're shaking in their boots right now because they don't know what to do with their injured quarterback, Kyler Murray. They're looking down the barrel of probably getting the first pick. And their players are talking about not wanting to play for them and staying in school if they're the first pick. So I think the alarm bells need to be going off here in Arizona. They are not poised for a very good season. I'd love to be surprised because I've kind of always thought that Arizona kind of has some of this flavor that they tend to do well when you don't expect them to. When they do have some expectations, they kind of fall flat. But there's really not much going for them this season. And then on the other side, we see Sam Howell starting at quarterback. Only one start. He went 13 for 22 last year in week 18, 181 yards, 1 touchdown, 1 interception. Not like the worst debut, but I don't really think that moves the needle in any particular way to excite people that he can lead this Washington offense better than, the terribly middling Taylor Heineke and I don't even know what to call Carson Wentz, just whatever they've been doing before. He doesn't really breathe a huge confidence for me. So that's why I'm leaning at under 38.5. This is kind of one of those games we were talking about earlier where 40 is kind of that threshold of now games are in the low range. And if you're still picking under, you better have a pretty good reason. And it's just, these two teams are young. There's not a lot going. The cards kind of look like they're selling already. And 84% of the total money on this handle here is on the under. I think it's kind of a no-brainer here. Do you see anything either way on that, V?
Well, this is my pick in all my survivor pools. Taking Washington. This is probably as good as a spot as you're going to get them all season, unless Sam
Yeah.
Howell kind of goes off and turns into a really good quarterback. So definitely like Washington to win this game outright. That's not anything crazy. I'm sure everybody is going to agree with that. But yeah, it's just not worth touching this game. I don't think on the spread or the total really. I mean, but I agree. If you're going to take something, you're probably going to take the under. I mean, where are you getting 38 points from? Where is Arizona putting up points in this game? I'm not really seeing it. Josh Dobbs, I think, did decently for Tennessee last year. Like he kind of helped them stay in the game, but that was maybe more ineptitude in Jacksonville's side in that Week 18 winner go home game. I
Yeah.
mean, he's not going to do anything where he's going to be able to help them win the game. Their weapons are fine. They have Hollywood Brown, they have Rondell Moore, but again, it's not like an elite group that you're excited about. James Conner was talking about maybe being traded this offseason. It doesn't seem like that's going to happen now that the season's starting so soon, but that was a possibility. It took Paris Johnson in the first round, so I think their offensive line could be better throughout the season, but he's a young guy. He might not be smooth sailing to begin with. I'm just not seeing anything for them. And then on defense, I don't know if you really name anybody on there besides Buda Baker. I mean, it's the wasteland on defense for them. So this is just not going to go well. I do have high hopes for Washington, though. I think they're a surprise playoff team for me this year. I think they can make it as one of the last wild card
Mm.
spots, maybe take the spot of the Giants from last year. I think this is a very solid group on both sides of the ball. I really like their weapons with Terry
Hmm.
McLaurin, Jahan Dotson, Brian Robinson, and Antonio Gibson aren't like the best running back group, but I think they're good enough. They can get it done. And Logan Thompson is coming back from a pretty big knee injury. He kind of wasn't himself last year, so hopefully he can be back to 100%. And then on defense, I think they're still loaded up front. We'll see what Chase Young can do, but even if he's not great, you still have so much talent there with guys like Montez Sweat and Jonathan Allen and everybody else they have on the D line. So I think this is going to be a good enough defense, especially in this game where I'm just not seeing how Arizona's going to put up any points.
Yeah, and it's also now a contract year for Chase Young, so that
Yep,
might have some motivation factor. But I'm right there
absolutely.
with you too. It's kind of like goes into what we just said about the Colts a second ago, where those weapons might not be the guy. They're the guys to prop up Anthony Richardson. Well, the weapons in Washington might be good enough to
I,
prop up
I
Sam
think they
Howell
are good enough. They can stay healthy. I think that's a underrated 1-2 duo with McLaurin and Dobson. I think it's
and
probably not
Dotson, right?
talked enough about right now, but that could be a very solid group going forward.
If they had, if say just out of the blue, if Rodgers had gone there, that'd be a really interesting team. Or if like they had
Yep.
a not a unknown at quarterback, or like they had or maybe if excuse me, if Derek Carr had gone there or whatever, just whatever the case may have been,
Mhm.
that's an interesting prospect for this offense. A guy that can really deal the ball to those weapons.
Yep.
You don't. That means you don't have to ask him to do a ton, but Sam Howell has a lot of question marks. It's something we're going to see. Now, is he the worst quarterback out there out of the young guys? I would say absolutely not. He played decently well in his only start of the year,
They
and
beat the
hopefully,
Ravens in the preseason. He's a god for as far as we know until otherwise proven, right? I mean, they broke that
right,
streak, and that was all Sam Howell. So trust him
right,
until they lose.
exactly. All right, I'm right there with you. But that's going to be that's not going to be an interesting one to watch. I'm just on automatic mode when I say that because this is not going to be an interesting one to watch. Maybe the Commanders are going to be more interesting down the road,
Right.
especially now that we don't have to talk about Dan Schneider or anything anymore. But that's going to be an interesting draw. So the next game that we have on the list is another one that I am on alone here, and it is Tampa Bay at Minnesota. So Minnesota is -5.5. Now I don't really love the line. I don't think it's the worst line, but I'm not really leaning towards the spread here. Where I'm at is the total for this game, which is at 45.5. Now, on the surface, that kind of looks like a big number if you are expecting Tampa Bay to be pretty atrocious on offense, which I think a lot of people are. But surprise to everybody, they actually graded out fairly well in the preseason, according to PFF. I know that Baker was one of their highest graded players. He played decently well. He had a lot of time. So, I mean, if they can end up being not a net negative on offense, where we know they've been kind of resilient on defense to some degree, I think Tampa Bay can be better than we think. And when we think about what Minnesota's going to do this season, it's the Justin Jefferson show. They're trying to outshoot everybody. They were atrocious in the secondary last season. They've not really had their footing for a few seasons in the secondary. A lot of their games are going to be shootouts, especially games that take place in Minnesota in the Dome. That's one of the highest scoring stadiums in the league. They're going to put up a bunch of points there. I think that Tampa Bay can actually kind of, put some points on the board too with this one. I don't want to really gas up what they have. I don't know that they're going to really compete for this division by any means, but I think at the end of the day, when it's all said and done, this could be a game that is 22-27 at the end of the day, and we hit an over. And I wouldn't be surprised if that were the case, especially since it gives me an opportunity to just kind of gush about Justin Jefferson, who, man, he's so good. I wish that I had gotten first in some fantasy drafts because I would have loved to pick him up. He's poised for another big season. I wrote this offseason that Justin Jefferson is my pick to break the PFF receiving grade record. He's the only player since 2006 when PFF started to go over a 90 receiving grade in his first 3 seasons. Only player to ever do it. The only other players to even get 3 in a row are Julio Jones, who owns the current record, Michael Thomas during his absolutely dominating stretch, and Devontae Adams currently, like right now, he's in the midst of it. So, like, that's elite company, and I think that they could end up being very, very good. And I'm excited to watch a lot of points get put up with this one. Is there anything that you're seeing with this game, V? I mean, feel free to talk up Justin Jefferson because you know me, I love to hear about it.
He's obviously fantastic. I unfortunately have to see him twice a year when they play the Bears, and he dominates every time. There's just no stopping him, and he's going to go off again this season. I definitely want to see what his contract extension looks like because that's going to be a big, big number. That's for sure. For this game, this is going to be a surprisingly good game, I think. I think I agree with you in terms of points in this game. Tampa Bay still has really good weapons. I mean, they still have Mike Evans and Chris Godwin. I know Brady left, but those guys haven't left yet. We'll see what happens with Mike Evans, but he's still there. That's still a very good group. I think their running back room will be fine with Rashid White. We'll see. I mean, it can't be much worse than kind of what they've been putting out last year, which is not efficient. So I think they'll be better this year. The big thing, though, for me in this game is we talked about Indy's secondary, who I didn't even know half the players. Same thing with Minnesota. I really just don't know who some of these guys are. They're starting corners right now. It's looking like it's going to be Byron Murphy, rookie Mekhi Blackman, and second-year player Caleb Evans. I just don't know who these guys are, and you're going to try to go up and stop Mike Evans and Chris Godwin. Good luck with that. It's not going to go well. I think there's going to be lots of points in this game. I agree with you, and I think this could be the upset special of the week. I think when we're talking, when all the talking heads are talking Monday and Tuesday, or they're talking about what was the biggest surprise from week 1, it might just be that Tampa Bay went into Minnesota and kind of
beat them.
Took a win.
I could 100% see it too, because they've just been so, like, their preseason was great. They had, I think, 9 players grade over 90. So just to put that into perspective, there were like over half of the league's teams didn't have a player grade in the 90s. Like the Rams didn't have a player grade over 78. So like to have like 8 or 9 players grading in the 90s is an insane feat. And we love the love for Justin Jefferson in the chat, obviously, too. Yep. Yo-Ye, big shout out to Yo-Ye, who is in one of my fantasy leagues, and he actually did get Justin Jefferson first. So nice. We're going to have a little duke it out session, but it's okay because I took our guy, V, Garrett Wilson.
I took him in one of my leagues too.
Did you?
Oh, yes.
Garrett, if you're watching this, come on the show, buddy. We'll have you on anytime. You've made us a lot of money. It's the least we can do. We love to see it. So that's it for that game. So I think that's it for the morning slate. I think the next one, yes. So we head into the afternoon slate. With our first game on the book. This is another one that you're on alone. And shout out to everybody rolling up in the chat. Love you guys all for all the love. Appreciate you. But back to this. So thank you, everybody. But now we have the Rams at Seattle. This is a game that you're on solo here, and you're liking Seattle at -5.5. It looks like the line's actually even moved a bit. We're seeing it at 4.5 in a lot of spots. It looks like FanDuel specifically has it at the best odds at -105 right here at 4.5. What are you seeing when you see Seattle, a team who last season this time we thought was going to be atrocious, who
Yep.
ended up being actually very good, comes out and they are a favorite against this Rams team, which I just talked about just a second ago, who has a lot of struggle going on right now. Looks like Cooper Kupp is not going to be able to play. He suffered a setback to that injury. That's going
Yep,
to be
already
something
ruled
to
out.
watch. Yeah, that's going to be something to watch for as we move forward. I don't know what the Rams really have that should scare everybody. I don't even think Sean McVay wants to be there anymore. It's going to be an
Nope.
interesting thing to watch moving forward. But Seattle is wow. And they go out and they get a receiver this year to bolster probably the strongest group on their team
Yep.
with more firepower. So, what do you see when you see this game and take this at 5.5, laying 5.5 by Seattle?
Well, there's just a start. You're absolutely right. We were crushing the Seahawks last week. Me specifically, if anybody joined us in the preseason last year, I put my bold claim out there that Seattle would be the worst team in the league and they would be drafting first overall. That did not work out very well. They ended up making the playoffs as a wild card team, and Geno Smith really shut me up last year. He was fantastic last season, and I think it's going to continue again this year. He's a sneaky play for me for MVP at plus 4,000. And the Seahawks are a team that I think can not only make the playoffs again, but win this division. If we're not 100% sold on Brock Purdy, I think Geno right now could be the best quarterback in that division. And it might not even be very close when the season's all said and done. For this specific game, though, oh my God, the Los Angeles Rams. This is an absolute disaster. I was really hoping, like in the middle of the offseason, that the Rams could kind of be one of my sleeper teams that they could kind of make some noise. You know, Cup was coming back, Stafford was going to be healthy again. They still have Aaron Donald. Those are like three really good pieces
They
that a
were
lot of teams
at,
can't
at one
beat.
point in the preseason, they're plus 300 to win. I was sitting there going, "Hey man, they're getting back the guys that
Yeah,
they went to a Super Bowl with. Like this should be a
right.
team that competes. That might be a value there." And
Yep.
oh my gosh, I don't even know
It's
what they're at right now. I
It's
bet you it's
completely turned around. It's turned around so much that I think that the Rams are. I talked about the Colts being a good sprinkle for worst team in the league. Rams are my favorite to be the worst team in the league, even more so than the Arizona Cardinals. I think there's a chance Kyler Murray could come back later in the year and maybe steal a couple wins for them. I don't know how the Rams are winning games, man. This is a mess. This is a disaster. If Cooper Cup he's already out for week one. It seems like there's a solid chance he goes on IR and can miss extended time. If he's not there, who are they throwing the ball to? I mean, Van Jefferson right now is listed as wide receiver one. That is a disaster. You're throwing to Van Jefferson, Tutu Atwell, Tyler Higbee. I mean, Cam Akers, who can't hold on to the football. A disastrous offensive line from last year. I think they had over 9 guys play more than 40% of the snaps on the offensive line last year. They just couldn't stay healthy. Even if they do stay healthy, there's nobody on there that is anywhere good enough to really be starting at the NFL level. So I'm scared for Matt Stafford. He's going to get banged up a lot. And then, oh my God, this defense is so bad. I mean, you have Aaron Donald, you have Josh Johnson, but besides that, I really don't think I can name or recognize a single player they have starting on defense. This is going to be a mess. I don't see how they're going to win very many, if any, games this year. Take them. I saw them at plus 1,000 to have the first overall pick in the next year's draft. I saw that last week. If you can still find that at plus 1,000, jump all over it because this is going to be a terrible, terrible team. And for this line to move down to 4.5 after the Cooper Cup news, I mean, strange to say the least. I'm all over Seattle.
yeah, and the one thing, and I hate to bring the analysis into like the behind the scenes things because we don't know what's happening behind the scenes. I have no idea.
Mm-hmm.
But if I were to speculate and I'm a player on that team and I see all of our good players going down, I see Aaron Donald nearly retiring, but only coming back for a big bag. I see Matthew Stafford, who struggled through an elbow injury last year. He's getting up a little bit there in age too. I see my head coach entertaining jobs as a broadcaster. Like it seems like a lot of guys just don't want to be there. And
Yep.
it almost seems like an LA Hollywood type ending for them to maybe, it seems like something Les Snead would write, like in the plan, like
Yep.
2023 tank, let Stafford ride off into the sunset, draft first overall,
Yeah, get Caleb
Caleb
Williams in your
Williams,
backyard, right?
and
I
you're
mean, what
right
could be a
back
better
in it.
story?
Like, you're literally right back in it. That seems like something Les Snead does, where he doesn't have this what's the term for it, um like investment bias, where like, you invest in something and you're like, it's got to turn out, I've already invested this much
Yeah,
into
no
it.
second cost fallacy for them. I think
Yes, sunken
he's
cost
very
fallacy,
ready
thank
to
you.
move on from guys if they're not performing well.
Yeah, exactly. So I think that he doesn't fall for that. He looks at everything as a depreciable asset, and he's accounted for when to take advantage of those type of things.
It worked. I mean, they won a Super Bowl. I mean,
It,
I don't think it's not a big deal that they're going to be bad this year. I mean, if I was a
right.
Rams fan, I don't know if there are any, but if I was a Rams fan, I wouldn't care that they're going to be bad again this year. I mean, you can just turn on 2020 Super Bowl highlights and just be happy for the rest of the day. I mean, there's nothing wrong with that, but it's the reality of the situation. I mean, they spent a lot of draft picks, a lot of capital to get good for a short period of time. It worked out well for them. They won a championship, and now they're going to be bad for a little while. That's just kind of what happened in this league.
And you know what? And they're on the better side of that, where when they get bad, they're pretty much better the next season. Like
Yeah.
they turn around fairly quickly. And you know what's funny is that I actually know two Southern California natives that are in the chat right now that are not fans of the Rams. So there you go. I guess that's everything that we need to know about that one. But also,
Yep.
just another thing that I want to highlight on, I'm extremely excited to see what Seattle can do on offense.
Yes.
They are going to be an interesting team to watch. They have a really, really good set of receivers. Jackson Smith and Nigbug is going to be so good for them in the slot because he just gets separation. He did not play much last season, so everything we have to go off of is his season prior. But man, was that tape so good for them.
Mhm.
I think that that's going to allow them to eventually probably move on from Tyler Lockett when the time comes. But Tyler Lockett still has a lot of good football in him. Now, maybe it's because he's smart and doesn't take a lot of hits. But otherwise, he's still a decent enough receiver that I think that he has a lot of game left to play. I can't wait to watch them play well. So
Also, their
that,
secondary. I mean, they have Tariq Woolen already. They drafted
yeah,
Devin Witherspoon, Jamal Adams. I think he's going to miss week 1, but he's off the PUP list. We haven't seen him since the start of last season. If he's back to even 80% of what he was, that is an elite secondary just waiting to shut people down. So overall, this is a very exciting team. I think they're going to do a lot of good things this season.
yeah, I agree. Pete strikes again.
Yep.
Old man Pete. All right.
How does he do it?
How does he do it? So we have a previous Super Bowl rematch here in week 1, but with none of the teams looking anywhere near similar. So we have the Philadelphia Eagles taking on the New England Patriots, and I am on the side of New England. No, I'm just kidding. Why would I bet against Philly? This is another one where like 3.5 on the road, it just isn't enough points.
Nope.
You're telling me that at home, Philly's not a full touchdown favorite against New England? Like, come on. I don't see that being the case in any way, shape, or form on any universe or planet. New England is just very middling. I just don't see a lot on their team that really scares me. Nothing really scared me last year. They acquired Juju. It's like, okay, like you are marginally better on offense, but what is that going to do for you against the potentially the best 53-man roster in the NFL again this year? Philly absolutely is the far and away favorite to win the NFC again this year. And you're telling me that they're only 3.5-point road favorites against a team that's probably going to be finishing last in the AFC East? Like, I just don't see that. I think when we look back on this game in a month, we're going to be like, I can't even believe they were only 3.5. And yeah, I mean, now it looks like it's even moved to 4. I still don't hate it at 4. Like we've talked about, 3 is a key number. When you're moving past 3.5, that's a very valuable half point. Another half point right there is not quite as valuable. I'm completely comfortable with 4 right there. V, do you see anything in this realm with these teams, or what are you seeing the Eagles might be able to do this year? Are you thinking they're going to be as good at are blah blah blah. Are you thinking that they're going to be as good as I'm thinking they're going to be out of the NFC?
I think so. I mean, it's tough to see where they're going to regress because it kind of seems like they had the same team as last year with some improvements. Not they didn't really they lost a couple guys, but it's still a very solid group, especially on offense. You still have Jalen Hurts, you still have AJ Brown, you still have Devontae Smith. You lost Miles Sanders, but you bring in DeAndre Swift. I mean, it's not shouldn't be a big deal. Offensive line is still one of the best in the league, if not the best. Defensive line is you added Jalen Carter, who could be the best player in the league in a couple of years. It wouldn't shock anybody, I don't think. To get him in the first round there was great for them. And then the rest of the defense is still solid enough. So I still really like Philly. For New England, I think the biggest move they made was replacing Patricia with Bill O'Brien. That should be a big time upgrade for them. It should help them out, but they still don't have very much talent there, just at all. They signed Juju Smith. They brought in Zeke Elliott, but I mean, who's scared of that offense? Who's going to make the big time plays there for them? I just don't see it. I feel like I'm not a Mac Jones hater, but I just don't feel like he's still in a good position to succeed. It seems like he would have to be like perfect every game for them to be a serious contender to make the playoffs this year. He just has to be lights out, and I just don't see that happening. New England does have a very, very solid defense, though. I think they're going to be a sneaky good defense this year. They still have Matt Judon. They have Kyle Duggar, Jack Jones, Jonathan Jones, and then in the first round they took Christian Gonzalez. So they could have a
Yeah.
really, really strong secondary, and then the rest of the front seven is pretty good too. So I wouldn't be shocked to see them be a top 10, top 5 defensive unit, but I just don't see where they're scoring points. I mean, this is just not going to be a high scoring team, and they're going to rely on, 17 to 14 type games to kind of sweep those out. And that's tough to do against the Philly team. That's
Yeah,
good
this
as
is gonna team.
offense.
Yeah, this is gonna be a team that hits about 70% unders on their season, probably because
Mhm.
they're just not gonna be able to find it on offense. Now, I know play calling was a huge issue for them last season, and maybe that's gonna be fixed this time around. But I don't know. Like we said, there's just not a lot of talent there for them to really hang their hat on. I think they're gonna have to run the ball all day long with all
And
these
Ramondre
backs that they have.
Stevenson got put on the injury report today with an illness, so he is
Who
officially
did?
questionable to play.
Who did?
Ramondre Stevenson.
Oh
So if he's out,
my.
you're
Okay.
stuck with Zeke Elliott. That's even
Well,
worse
then,
for them.
yeah, I
Yeah,
think, that does not bode well for them because, again, that's another like you lost your best player on offense type thing,
yeah.
3 days before the game. So that's going to be a tough draw for them. But man, I can't wait to see what Philly does this season. I think that they are going to absolutely curb stomp a vast
Revenge story.
majority of the teams that they play. And I can't wait to watch it happen. They are going to be a very good team for years to come, for sure.
Yep, for sure.
Um, Okay, and then the last game that I have on the list here in the late window. See, you're
Oh,
gonna like this one. You're gonna like
yes.
this one. We have Green Bay at Chicago with the Bears as 1-point favorites, baby. Breathe it in, V. The Bears are back, baby. We are favorites first week of the season over the Packers. Now, truth be told, it's obviously because Rodgers is no longer around to bully and torment the Chicago Bears. But man, the Bears are still just good on their own merit. Justin Fields has the best offense he's had in his career, in his pro career this time around. DJ Moore, Darnell Mooney, they have a lot of pieces. I see him being another breakout candidate for MVP this season. With his ability on the ground and his ability to throw. Now, we haven't really seen his ability as a passer so much as a pro, but he did kind of put that on display at Ohio State a little bit. We're trying to see that translate this year with some better targets and hopefully a lot more separation from those guys.
Yes.
I can't wait to see that play out. So this is an easy one for me because honestly, on the other side of it, I like what Chicago's doing, but really I'm just scratching my head at what Green Bay really has to offer this year. Jordan Love, I'm sure that he's going to make some fine strides in year 3, but they really just don't have the firepower around him to really, cushion his fall if it were to come. He wasn't overly impressive last year in his limited time. I know that he did have that one game that had everybody talking, but I don't really know if that moves the needle. They don't have a ton of weapons. Their defense was kind of middling last year. This might be the Bears' division to take, and this will be the first game on that road to winning the North. And it starts right here with Green Bay, and you can only write a story so well. And I have another one for this one, and this is a moneymaker if I've ever seen it, V, because we were all over these all season long last year. But I have a prop for this game. Justin Fields over 58.5 rushing yards. Now, just some tidbits on that. We made a ton of money off of taking overs off Justin Fields last year.
Yep.
And it's because he was an absolute menace to end the season. So Green Bay actually allowed the 7th most rushing yards to quarterbacks last season. And part of it was because when Justin Fields played them at home, he absolutely erupted against them. He had over 70 yards on the ground when they played late in the year. He had a 55-yard carry for a touchdown. He can get this entire number in one carry, and I don't see it not happening. When he has these type of weapons that he's going to have, I think these running lanes are going to be even bigger. And yes, I think his passing numbers are going to be increased, but I think these running numbers are going to see a lot bigger lanes and are going to see some sizable marks too. I think that this is going to be the lowest number you get his rushing total at all year, because it's going to start skyrocketing at this point. I remember at one point last year, we were doubling his rushing total, and it still wasn't enough. Every single week, they were doubling it, and it still wasn't enough. So I'm right there over Justin Fields. V, what are you seeing when you see the Bears hosting the Packers in week 1?
Yeah, this is an interesting one. I know you said it should be cool that they're favored, but honestly, the fact that they're only favored by 1 point is not very comforting. It's not great. This opened up at 3, even 3.5 at some places earlier in the offseason. And throughout the preseason, it slowly trickled down to, -2.5, -2, down to -1 in some places, maybe back up to 1.5. But that doesn't scream a lot of confidence from odds makers and the Bears. I mean, you're telling me that this Green Bay team on a neutral field is a 1.5 point favorite, even though they've lost so much on offense and even some on defense, compared to a Chicago team that's added so much. That doesn't really speak well in terms of the confidence the outsiders have in this team. But we'll see how it plays out for them. I think the key for this one, though, Christian Watson ruled out already today. He's not going to play. That leaves the Packers with Romeo Dobbs, who's questionable. He might not even play. Jaden Reed, who's a rookie. Lucas Musgrave, who's a rookie. There was just no receiving weapons on this team right now with Christian Watson out. They're not going to have an easy time moving the ball at all. It might be just a lot of running with
Aaron Jones, yeah.
Aaron Jones and A.J. Dillon. I mean, those are good backs, but it's going to be a lot of reliance on them. We'll see. If the Bears can pull out this one with how limited the Packers are on offense, it's going to be a tough one. I'm not going to be able to live this one down, but we'll see. This is a big game. This is like a make or break game for the Bears. They kind of need to prove that the moves they made in the offseason were worth it, and that Fields is a legitimate quarterback. So we'll see how this one plays, but I have to agree with Chicago -1 just because of Watson being ruled out. I mean, there's just nobody for Jordan Love to throw the ball to.
And for everybody at home, V's a diehard Bears fan. He's just trying to look at it with a level head here.
There's no level head
when I cut the camera off, we're both going to give a go Bears.
Of course.
The Bears, and that's how we're going to sign off. So, but it actually looks like Betting Pros isn't listing anything under A.J. Dillon and Aaron Jones right now. That's definitely going to be something you're going to want to watch looking forward.
Yeah, feel free to take the over on whatever those numbers are, because they're not going to stop the run again this year.
Yeah, short of it being an astronomical number, I think you're pretty safe taking it over on there. They're going to both have a ton of carries.
Yep.
So I think that's definitely a safe bet too. So the next game on the list is another one that we're not really like in so much on the game totals itself, but is one that you particularly like as a prop target here. And it does make a lot of sense because the Cowboys, they produced when a lot of people didn't think they were going to. And the Giants starting offense might not have played a lot this preseason, but when they did, they looked pretty good. Dan Jones went down 8 of 9. and threw for a nice little touchdown. They just marched down the field and then never played another snap. So this is going to be something that I'm going to be extremely interested in watching. And one that you're targeting here on this game, the total and spread for this game, by the way, are -3.5 for Dallas on the road. And the total is at 45.5. Something that you're targeting here, though, that we see is Dak Prescott. Let me see if I can't get it. Oh, it doesn't have it on here. You're targeting Dak Prescott over 241.5 passing yards. For some reason, it looks like betting pros might need to update the props list. That's okay. They get around to it as the week goes. But what are you seeing when you see Dak going over this number at 241.5?
Yeah, I really like this over. The Giants are another team that has a lot of issues in the secondary. Their starting corners heading into the season are Dory Jackson from Tennessee, and then a couple first-round rookies with Deontay Banks and Trey Hawkins. Deontay was a first-round pick, and Trey Hawkins was a sixth-round pick this past draft. That's just not going to cut it when you have to play against guys like CeeDee Lamb, Brandon Cooks, Michael Gallup. I mean, that's a very, very strong receiving core, and Tony Pollard out of the backfield, who is very good at catching the ball. I just don't see how this Giants secondary is going to be able to do anything. I think we really like their front seven. They have guys like Dexter Lawrence up front who are just monsters who are going to eat up a lot of space and create a lot of pressure. But I just don't see how anybody in their secondary is going to stop this passing attack. Dak only played the Giants once last season, and he had 261 passing yards. I think it's going to be the same thing again. He only played 12 games last season. He averaged 238 passing yards for the season, which is just a little bit under this number. But in 16 games he played in 2021, he averaged 278 passing yards per game. So I think in general, throughout his career, he has a high passing average, and I think it's going to continue again this season. Brand new offensive coordinator, great weapons with the addition of Brandon Cooks. I think this could be a very potent offense throughout the season.
Yeah, and in another thing that does bode well for that number potentially going up is that the Giants really only, strong point that they've kind of showed, at least in the preseason, was that one drive. If they're able to maybe put something together offensively, that could push this game into forcing Dak to throw a little bit more. But like you said, they don't really have anybody to cover anybody.
No,
So
not at all.
I'm not really sure what they're supposed to do. They're really going to have their work cut out for them to hang tough with these guys because that's a lot of talent on the outside. A lot of good receivers. It seems like everywhere Brandon Cooks goes, he's just a walking 1,000-yard machine. So, good luck figuring out what you're going to do to cover him. And that's even with, some injury shortened seasons. Like this guy might be quietly the most consistent receiver to play over the last decade. So I'm right there with you. I think over 241 is a nice number, especially for a guy like Dak that has shown the ability to flick it around a little bit and put up significantly larger numbers than we
there was
might.
a PFF stat recently where Prescott was only one of three guys to put up a certain number of 300 plus passing yard games over the last couple seasons. It was like him, Joe Burrow, and I think Mahomes. I think so. He's right up there in that category of guys who can consistently throw the rock when he needs to.
Right, exactly. It really just comes down to their game script kind of working for him and as opposed to against him, which it has sort of in the past with the team getting overly addicted to the run, trying to get Zeke involved and Tony Pollard involved. Now you don't really have that problem. Give Pollard his carries and nothing more, or not his carries, but his touches and nothing more. Don't overwork him. Let Dak throw it around a little bit and work his magic. It's going to be a nice little draw for him there. I'm right there with you. And so that is the Sunday night game. So everybody mark that one for the calendar. It's going to be a really, really good one, by the way. The last game on the list here, though, Monday Night Football, we have Buffalo at the Jets. Buffalo is 2.5-point favorites on the road. And I'll have to tell you, I went back and forth on this one. I almost didn't include this one. I almost didn't include this one, but there was something that kept echoing in my mind. And every time I think about how good the Jets could be this year, it's usually due to this line. Last season, you'll remember this because we talked about it all the time. At one point last season, Zach Wilson, a starting quarterback in the NFL, played an entire NFL game, all 60 minutes, and threw for 77 yards. And the Jets won that game. And now This same team who played Buffalo last year in New York and won 17-20 with Zach Wilson under center, who had 154 yards and a touchdown that game. That's one of Zach's better games, by the way.
Yep.
Now that same team gets to do it again with Aaron Rodgers. And you're meaning to tell me that they're plus 2.5 at home. Now, I get that the Bills are a really good team. They're going to be competing for championships. A lot of people think this is the Bills' year to take the whole damn thing. That would be fine if Aaron Rodgers didn't just walk into the division. And I get that Aaron Rodgers was not as good as he was last season against his back-to-back MVP seasons. But this is a much better team than he was looking at last year in Green Bay. This team has the juice on defense and the talent on offense to get it done. And we've talked about it ad nauseum for over a year. Garrett Wilson is that dude. He is that man.
Yep.
And now you give him a good quarterback to throw to. I couldn't really find many lines, at least through Betting Pros, about his receiving stats. I think his receiving line was at 70. Take that over all the way up to like 95 yards. And then anything on his receptions are take that over too, because they are going to absolutely make Garrett Wilson one of the best receivers. This is going to be his breakout season. If last year wasn't already, he's going to be a household name now because of how often Aaron Rodgers is going to feed him this football. I absolutely love them for the added juice on offense. If these two teams played last year so close and they were atrocious on at quarterback, and now they have a former MVP under center, I think that's a no-brainer. I think this is the only time all season you will have the opportunity to take the Jets at home with points. And I'm not going to stop there. I'm also going to take them on the money line at plus 138 because that's just a little bit too nice of a grab there. I think that when it really comes down to it, this is a good Jets team and they can be pushing for this division. And people are going to recognize after this week, I think. Is there anything that you're seeing with this matchup, V?
In terms of picking this game, either way on the spread, I'll probably stay away. But I totally agree with you that I expect big things from this New York Jets team. If anybody watched Hard Knocks this summer, you heard Robert Saleh say we went 7-10 last year with a mediocre offense, and that's putting it nicely. These guys started Joe Flacco, Mike White, and Zach Wilson last year, and they won 7 games. That tells you how good the rest of that team is. You add Dalvin Cook to go with Breece Hall, who should be coming back off his ACL injury last year. You have a fantastic defense with guys like Sauce Gardner, DJ Reed. You re-sign Quinnen Williams. I mean, it's loaded everywhere you look. There is no weak spot anymore on this team. It would be crazy for this team to not make the playoffs. Something would have to have happened with Aaron Rodgers over the offseason. He would have had to truly lost like all of his ability, which I just don't see happening. This is a very, very good team, top to bottom. And yeah, if you're going to take the Jets to cover 2.5, you might as well take the money line because again, we talked about it a lot last year. When it's under that 3, it's essentially a pick 'em. You're really just picking who's going to win this game. So take the extra juice on the money line.
Right. Yeah, absolutely agree. Just like you said. And another thing that I think might not be being highlighted enough is that at times last year, this Bills team was not the Bills team of reputation. Of this, elite defense and unstoppable offense. There were times where Josh Allen looked human. And I know that, most of the times things regress back to the mean, but that's going to be something that people need to watch for because, his health was an issue last year. And that's going to be something that they need to make sure that they're watching for. And if he continues to run the football, that might not be a great option for them. And if he's to go down, the Bills might not be pushing other teams like we think they are because Josh Allen is a guy that does make everybody around him better. So absolutely. I'm excited to see it. I think that this game should have been a closer spread at home though, for the Jets. And this is definitely going to be the only time you can get the Jets at home with points. So, go jump on that if you're
definitely be the game of the week. I am super looking forward to it. They did a great job picking their week 1
best. Yeah. Best matchup of the week is definitely the Monday Night Football matchup. It makes a ton of sense. And so that actually does it. That's our last game of the first slate of the year. V, it feels so good to be back. Back same time next week, 8 p.m. Eastern. So everybody, thank you guys for all coming through. Look forward to talking to you guys more later. Definitely check us out at importantnonsense.com. That's where you can get all of the IN team's work written. That's where you can get all of our merch, promo code LOCK. And that's how you can become a member. And all of the members get into our Discord. That's where you can ask us questions about fantasy football, DFS, guillotine betting, all that good stuff. So definitely make sure you check it out. And yeah, I think that about does it for us, V. It was a great week. Do you have any parting words for the people at home?
It's great to be back. Great to be talking with you again, Mason. Great to be talking to all the viewers and listeners. And yeah, please definitely jump into the Discord, hop into our sports betting channel, and just ask us questions. We're here to help. We want to make sure everybody is making money to start off the season. So hop on in, ask questions, and we'll all have a great, successful season. I'm sure of it.
Absolutely, absolutely. Oh, and definitely check out our Twitch, our YouTube, and our Facebook page to check us out every single week here and all of the shows. We have an entire lineup all week long from everybody here at IN for anything that you need: fantasy, betting, guillotine, all that stuff, DFS. So check it out. And until next time, everybody, good luck and Godspeed.
Week 1.